Attention on deck. Welcome to the Warships Podcast with your hosts, Kellord, Kami Samurai, and Vanacera.
Hello and welcome to episode 73 of the Warships Podcast. I'm your host, Kellord. Vanessa is here, and Kami just played his 10,000th World of Warships battle. We also have special guest Aerroon back again on the podcast. Welcome back, Aerroon.
Hey guys, has been a while, I suppose.
You had a bit of a break from Warships, but you seem to be kind of back in full force now in terms of streaming and videos and stuff.
Yep, I tried. These kinds of breaks seem to happen sometimes. I don't really plan them, but, you know, they are what they are.
Oh, I think that we all can understand that. Honestly, I haven't played a ton of Warships in the last couple of months, just outside of the testing and some of the a few other things. Just like because the clan battles and Supremacy League right before it really just like it burnt me out a little bit. So I've been taking it easy in terms of the amount of ships that I've actually been playing. So I totally understand. Well, we're stoked to have you back on the show after a bit of an absence. Today, we have a couple of new premium destroyers to talk about, as well as some changes to the French battleship Gascogne. All these ships are a work in progress, and their stats are not yet final, so keep that in mind. First up is the Tier 6 United States Navy destroyer Monaghan. A modified Farragut class, she sports the Sea Hull configuration with 4 127mm guns, but does not get the defensive fire, at least in the version that we tested. In compensation, she gets a better concealment and slightly more hit points. I have to be honest, guys, I felt like Monaghan was inferior to the Farragut, but I've also talked to some of the other community contributors, and they felt like it was better because of the concealment and the hit points really made up for the lack of the gun. So I'm really curious what you guys felt about Monaghan and where she fits in as a Tier 6 premium.
Honestly, I didn't like that ship, but that's probably because it's Tier 6. About when you compare it to a Farragut, I would say they play basically the same in my opinion, because you don't really get any sizable advantages over the other one. Your playstyle ends up being the same because of that. You know, you go for the cap zones, you can't stealth torpedo. I suppose you are actually slightly superior because of your concealment, but other than that, I didn't feel that the ship was anything really that special.
Yeah, I have to really agree. You can't stealth torpedoes still, so you're at that weird kind of spot where you really just kind of bully the caps and contest, but you don't have the ability to kind of stand off and, you know, throw torpedoes out there and, you know, hope to, you know, kind of catch a ship off guard. So, you know, it's really just a Farragut that's a premium version and just, you know, slightly differences here and there.
I suppose you can stealth torpedo in that regard, that if a ship is moving towards you, you can torpedo, you know, them because they will get in range of the torpedoes eventually. But yeah, I agree. Other than that, I don't see what you're going to do with that ship that's anything really different from the Farragut.
Yeah, but that's really difficult to pull off. Like, really, really difficult.
I guess Farragut to me is a gunboat, and its torpedoes are for ambushes and kind of, you know, point defense type of stuff rather than being more of a torpedo boat. And the change to the concealment, which is literally, it might be like a 0.1 kilometers different, but it's almost identical to the torp range. So in my mind, that's not enough to turn her into some kind of nice stealth torpedo boat. Plus the lack of one of the guns, I didn't feel like the things that it gave up was enough to make it, you know, kind of a worthwhile premium. Now, if they were to add defensive fire back to the ship because it's a Sea Hull Farragut, I feel like that would be enough compensation to make Monaghan a really compelling option at Tier 6 for a destroyer.
I agree with that one, but I would like to mention one other thing, that is the range on the Monaghan. She's basically has the same range as the Farragut, right? The fully upgraded Farragut, which means you don't have the option of taking that 1 kilometer off the range, and you don't really need 12.5 kilometer range on a destroyer like that, because I had an I had a Hiryu in a match I played. She was basically either standing still or moving in reverse. And when I fired the guns, the distance that the shells have to travel actually brought out the dispersion on the ship, because I managed to miss an aircraft carrier in a destroyer with guns. I don't know how, but some shells fell short, some went over. You don't really need that kind of range on a US destroyer, in my opinion. So you are better off
punching holes in the sky at that point.
Yeah, you're better off without it because of the spotting range, right?
Yeah, I did kind of run into those similar issues as well when trying to engage and fire at targets. That extra range keeps you lit and spotted, and definitely when you are trying to disengage and move around and set up for another position, you're still spotted because of that extra range. So yeah, it's definitely frustrating.
I think it honestly comes back to one of the points that's a core game design element, that you stay spotted for 20 seconds after firing your guns, no matter what caliber of guns that you fire. So a Yamato with a 30-second reload can stop firing its guns, and before it can actually fire another shot, it goes dark. The ranges of spotting range is reduced. Whereas in a destroyer, that 20 seconds feels like a much longer time than it does when you're driving something like a Yamato or a battleship.
It's an eternity.
Kami, did you get a chance to play Monaghan at all? And if so, kind of what were your thoughts about her?
It's a Farragut. We've talked about this a few times about premiums being added to the game that are kind of the same ship that's already in the game. And I feel like the Monaghan's, I think it's there more for historical purposes than it actually is for people to play it. That's my feeling. But I mean, if you like Tier 6, if you like USN destroyers and you want a premium, this is a good one, because it's not going to play much different. Other than, like you guys said, the gun range, which is worse in the sense of being detected when you fire. But I mean, it's just a Tier 6 destroyer, and I personally would just play the regular Farragut if I was going to play a Tier 6 DD or something like that. But I mean, it's here for a reason. Wargaming thinks that it's gonna be something that people are interested in. So I mean, I wouldn't be surprised to see them, but I'm just not a fan of ships that are very close to ships that are in the game. And really, when you think about it, you losing the gun, I don't think is a great trade-off for like 0.1 in detection range. I mean, that doesn't seem great at all. And you don't even have the option for defensive fire, which I wouldn't say you would use on a Farragut, but it's always nice to have choices, And I just don't feel like the Monaghan has choices.
That's a fair point. So next up is the premium IJN destroyer Asashio. Last week we had a version with fairly standard Kagero torps, but this week we have a new version with 20-kilometer deepwater torps that can only hit battleships and carriers. As an added bonus, she gets both the smoke and the torpedo reload consumables, similar to the old Shiratsuyu. I find this to be a relatively unique ship option for warships, but I know that some of the other people that have tried her have found her to be a very niche ship in terms of what she can and can't do.
Well, I haven't played the deepwater torpedo version yet, but the old version, the one that was literally just a copy of a Kagero, except worse gun reload and worse anti-air and worse rudder shift, other than that, she was basically identical. I thought that one was, bad because she was literally worse than the Kagero. So the new one that gets the smokescreen and the torpedo reload booster and the new deepwater torpedoes that can't hit cruisers is going to be somewhat more interesting because it offers other options. I'm not quite convinced it'll be great though, but it'll at least, give you a chance of doing something different. The torpedoes, I'm kind of afraid that they will just annoy battleships even more, and you can't use them to defend yourself against cruisers, let alone destroyers. So I do have some questions about the usability of them. Plus, I'm not sure Wargaming actually really wants to have 20-kilometer torpedoes like that in the game, because it means that those destroyers are going to have torpedo acceleration. And, that means the torpedoes are even faster. And it will be even harder to avoid them if they do accidentally get somewhere near you.
I guess we already have a Tier 8 premium destroyer. Well, sort of. It's IJN destroyer. It's in HSF Harakaze, which I find to be a really compelling choice, and that's significantly different than your two other options for Tier 8 IJN destroyers that are Kagero and Akizuki, which I feel like it's a nice middle ground between those two ships, which I find that both have really good aspects, but each one is a little too far to the other direction. So I find Harakaze with the 100mm guns and the 2 torpedo racks to be a really compelling option to play for a Tier 8 IJN destroyer. So I guess I didn't see the point of Asashio being essentially a Kagero replica, though it was a slightly different ship class. So I think that it's good that it's different, because why would we need a 4th IJN destroyer essentially that does something similar to 2 of the others?
Well, I don't know about you guys, but since deep water torpedoes only hit battleships and carriers, I'm going after the carrier. I mean, I'm going to sail around the map, and then I'm going to launch a bunch of torpedoes at a carrier, see what happens. But
why don't you just hope that it's ocean, so you can fire the torpedoes from your spawn and never go elsewhere?
Oh, if it's ocean, that's perfect. Yep. I would literally just turn my engines, turn broadside, and fire all my torpedoes across the map. Hey, this is a ship that I find to be quite interesting, because if you get caught, I think if you get into a gunfight with another Tier 8 destroyer, I think they just wreck you, right? Like, I don't think you have the ability to fight back. I mean, yes, you got smoke and everything, but we know how IGN DDs and gunfighting really works for them, right? It's not that great. I mean, occasionally you'll win a gunfight, but if the other guy can aim, you're probably going to lose just because your guns don't do as much damage and the reload's slower and all that. But I find it really interesting that it has deep water torpedoes that only hit battleships and carriers. I mean, that's essentially telling this destroyer, don't contest a cap, don't go do things that destroyers need to do, and just go look for things to torpedo. And I think that's giving the wrong message to the player base. Deep water torpedoes already are kind of a menace in the sense of their detection range and what they do. But at least those ones could hit cruisers. So, the Pan-Asian DDs would still go onto the cap, still contest the cap. But this is kind of telling this ship that it doesn't have any place in there, because you can't hit destroyers, you can't hit cruisers, so you might as well just go do your own thing. And I think that's a bad message to players, because you already know there's a lot of players that don't use destroyers in the way that some of us believe they should, and contesting caps or map control. And this ship is not going to do either. I would not be surprised if I turn on my stream one day and there's a dude just sailing around the map looking for the aircraft carrier, trying to torp the Ranger or something. And I don't know. I don't know if it's good for the game to have a Tier 8 destroyer with 20-kilometer deep water torpedoes. And what are they, 67 knots, I think? So even with torpedo acceleration, goes down to 16 knots, and they're 16 kilometers, and they go 72 knots. I mean, I don't know. And you think about it, if you're top tier, think about the battleships you would be torping with these. Fuso, New Mexico, I mean, I don't know.
I think that.
Well,
I think that you'll have a lot of fun with the Asashio going around, but I don't think that's going to be, rare about the Asashio or special about her. I'm sure you'll see Monaghans trying to go torpedo that Ranger as well. As far as the gunboat is concerned, though, or the guns, she is still Kagero concealment, right? Which is still useful, because when you're in a cap zone, you're not the one that's going to be fighting off the other destroyer. You're just spotting them so that your battleships can shoot their destroyer, and you are avoiding being spotted by the enemy destroyer so that their battleships can't shoot you. So in that sense, I do think that she can go and cap. However, I agree that the torpedoes not being able to hit cruisers might push some of the destroyers off from the cap zone when they normally wouldn't. So, I agree with the capping part somewhat, not quite fully though.
Yeah, I mean, I know we all here on the cast feel that as a destroyer, you should definitely be playing the objective. And if the objective is a domination, you need to get in there and contest the caps, or at least spot and aid your team in contesting the caps, capturing them, and defending off the enemy. So this destroyer, and I played quite a few matches with it and was able to get pretty decent success out of it. And I actually felt the guns were quite decent. And if you are, if you're cautious and don't go in guns blazing, but use your guns at the right time, then I feel this ship is very decent. Obviously, I haven't tested with the deep water torpedoes, but I do agree that deep water torpedoes is probably going to lead to that play style of, let's just sit back and spam torpedoes. Those of us who've been around for a while can, recall what happens when, the old Shimakaze torps and just kind of the ridiculous spam that kind of, permitted. So hopefully we don't necessarily see that, but let's see what happens with testing and how things go with it. But other than that, I feel like this destroyer is a standard run-of-the-mill IJN destroyer that it's not really amazing, but isn't necessarily terrible either.
Well, you can't go guns blazing in anyway and have to pick your shots because your reload is so long.
Yeah, true. But there are some people who, as soon as something gets into range, will start firing. And instead of, waiting for that really good opportune shot.
I think another point about this is that it's got the same gun configuration as Kagero and I'm blanking on the Tier 9 Yugamo. So it's got two guns on the rear. So it's actually quite good at running away and shooting rather than going towards somebody.
Exactly.
Well,
I had a great deal of success doing just that, running away and, watching the incoming shots, dodging the incoming shots, and returning fire, especially on USN destroyers that, have the moon shots and, just hitting them and nailing them as, you're just running away.
It's going to be great until you get hit for 10,000 damage by some battleship that sits 15 kilometers away.
What?
That's always the risk.
Yeah, well, that's true with any DD, though. Until they change AP reaction to destroyers.
Oh, are we gonna have this conversation right now? DD and AP? Are we gonna?
I mean, we have some indications that they have been testing it, but nothing. It was on the dev blog and whatnot, but it hasn't really come to fruition.
Thinking. If you're in a destroyer and you get hit by a shell the size of a school bus, what happens to your destroyer?
Nothing. The shell phases through my destroyer, and I don't get hit.
But it puts a giant hole in the size of your ship that would sink your ship.
No, it's just an
air
hole.
They do things to. This is a game, and you have to balance for gameplay purposes. Not everything in this game is historical. Otherwise, we'd all be sailing carriers and battleships.
I don't think that's entirely true. I mean, historically speaking...
ships like the Hindenburg exist.
I mean, historically speaking, think of how many destroyers and cruisers were used during the war. I mean, I don't know. We won't get into it, but all I'm saying is you let me know when the AP changes happen and you can't kill that Cabros that's annoying you in a battleship, and then I don't want to hear complaining about it.
Oh, God. Well, I think that one of the things that I've taken to heart about the dev blog is that they will often put things on there that they are truly testing that they may or may not intend to implement on the live servers. And so it's kind of a double-edged sword is you see things on that dev blog and you're like, wow, that could ruin the game. But it isn't necessarily a bad thing for them to test it and realize why it would ruin the game. Am I making any sense here?
No, I think you make a lot of sense.
I would just answer, the Khabarovsk is, well, change it to the light cruiser that it is. Throw a Citadel in there, and there you go.
I don't think it'll make it any easier to actually hit the thing, though.
No, but it'll blow up pretty when you actually do. So last up is the premium French battleship Gascogne. We talked about the Gascogne a couple of weeks ago, and there was a fairly broad consensus that the original test version of Gascogne needed a bit of a buff. And Wargaming didn't disappoint in that. That said, the Sigma buff to 1.9, a minor range nerf, and a cooldown buff to Repair Party were far more subtle than the reload buff that I kind of expected. She's still stuck with a pretty terrible 30-second reload on 8 380mm guns. But this buff certainly sets her apart from some of the other battleships at her tier. Now, Gascogne was kind of unique in that it has 2 quad turrets, one on each end of the ship. I don't know that these buffs are... I think these buffs are enough to make Gascogne an adequate ship, but not necessarily a good one.
I don't know. I think the change is absolutely horrifying. How am I supposed to now be able to go against other battleships when my maximum range is only 23.8 kilometers? What is this? This is just...
literally unplayable.
Yeah.
Literally unplayable.
Yeah, literally unplayable. Okay, but jokes aside, I actually I think that the changes are quite interesting. And I was slightly afraid that they might even be a bit too good. Well, some of them. Specifically the Repair Party one. Because when it ends up being only 40 seconds, that's the same as a destroyer, though, right? And you're gonna get it lower as well when you use like the flag.
Well, remember, Repair Party is the HP repair, not the damage control.
Wait, never mind then. Ignore what I said. Yeah, that doesn't really make a difference then. Oh, I guess the ship, yeah.
It'll still burn very well, Aerroon. It'll still burn very well if that's and flood.
Well. That makes the range nerf even worse than...
literally unplayable.
Man, this ship, I don't really know what to say about it because, I mean, it was bad. And we all know that. We all played it. It was bad.
The hilarious thing, though, Kami, is that so many of us liked France, which is essentially just an upscaled version. But
I think it was
Gascogne.
due to France's guns performing.
I don't know. I actually found both of them really fun, even the Gascogne. But then again, I think I mostly got like lower tier matches in it, so I wasn't like bottom tier against tier 10s.
Yeah, I mean the Gascogne's not unplayable. It's not an unplayable ship, but it's not a ship that I would be like having fun in, I guess. It's gonna take a different type of playstyle to make this ship work. And getting used to those quad turrets, I mean, a lot of people are going to struggle with the way that the gun setup is on the Gascogne and then also on France. I mean, it's not a bad ship in the sense of the way it looks or anything, but the way it plays and the way this game works, it's going to be a struggle for some people. I mean, I personally am not a fan of it, but then again, I love the France. So it's like it's hard to say that the gun configuration is wrong. It just feels different because the guns are smaller, I guess.
Maybe they should give her an extra 3 kilometers of range. I'm sure that would fix her.
Yes, 27-kilometer range on it would be awesome.
See, I really advocated for that because it's got 8 guns and they're 15-inch guns, that it needed a 28-second reload. I thought that was just enough to give her the ability to kind of compete with some of the other battleships in her tier. And that's why I thought that these buffs were very, very subtle. And even the Repair Party one isn't necessarily I think that one might actually turn into be a very powerful one because you'll be able to get your HP back much faster than a conventional battleship, with the exception of the super heal on the 3 RN battleships. So again, I think it's an interesting ship, but until I play it more, I'm not convinced that it's going to be a really good one.
What is the Monarch's reload?
I believe it's 28 seconds.
So you're thinking is put this on par with that, since it's the 15-inch gun is
well, but I mean the Bismarck and the Trumpets get 28 seconds.
But then this goes to another thing. Would you change the Richelieu's reload? Because I believe it's 30 seconds, right?
I would. And that's one of my big problems with the Richelieu is that I love playing the Richelieu. I love the gameplay that it's very easy to get all your guns on target basically all the time. But it is painful to only be able to fire twice a minute with 8 guns. It's just painful.
That makes sense.
By the way, the Monarch reload is 25 seconds.
The famous and historical Monarch.
That ship was made.
Or at least that's what the Warships wiki says. I like the Richelieu too, though. By the way,
Yeah, well, give us your quick opinion on Richelieu, because it's kind of one of the most unique ships in the French line, Aerroon.
I think that she'll be great at bow camping, although you will still be vulnerable to all that HE spam by the cruisers. I do think that the 380mm guns are going to be a bit of a problem against some of the cruisers that you can't overmatch anymore because they have armor plates that are slightly too thick. But other than that, I thought that she was great against other battleships. She was quite fun. And I agree that I think a faster reload on the Gascogne would make her quite a bit better, because then she would also be more similar to what the France is, right? Because France also has an amazing reload.
Well, I'm not even asking for an amazing reload. I'm asking for a slightly better one. I mean, I just confirmed in the game client that Monarch has a 25-second reload, and it has one more gun than Gascogne does. So it's like you fall so far behind the DPM curve.
I mean, the Monarch is an amazing ship, isn't it? Everybody thinks that she's insanely overpowered, so maybe that's why, right?
Your sarcasm really subtle,
heavy.
Aerroon. I like it. Vanessa, did you get a chance to play Gascogne in either of its forms yet?
Yeah, I played it. Not the newest iterations of it, but yeah, I played it, and yeah, I actually had decent matches with it in all the matches that I played, but I wasn't a really big fan of it. I do agree that, last week we talked about Gascogne. Why is this not in the tech tree to be, more of a play up to France when you get to that ship? But, I would understand that people would kind of, scream bloody murder if Richelieu was not, accessible. And if they put it behind as a premium, I know people would just probably lose it. I mean, we've got Jean Bart for that, for the premium option, but I don't understand why Wargaming just didn't do like a small line split like they do in World of Tanks and then have it come right back to Alsace, with Gascogne and Richelieu. But yeah, I mean, I played it. It was okay. I'm not a huge fan of it, so.
Fair enough. Well, that does it for the test ships that we have to cover this week, but the Warships dev blog provided a sneak peek at an upcoming Tier 9 Russian cruiser, Kronstadt, as well as a Tier 8 German destroyer, Z-39, which has the distinction of serving in 3 different navies. Kronstadt promises to be a new type of cruiser with 12-inch guns and an enormous 82,000 hit point pool. Similarly, Z-39 sports 150 millimeter gun option of her sister Z-23 that is in the tech tree. I guess, what did you guys think about these relatively large ships with large guns for their tiers?
I thought that was interesting that a cruiser has the second highest HP at Tier 9. No, third highest, because Musashi has been added. Third highest HP in Tier 9.
Where's my Alaska? Or in better, the Guam.
I do think that that's a good point, Kami, that Guam and Alaska are now viable ships to come into the game if we see Kronstadt actually make it into the client. But one of the things about the hit point pool is that it doesn't seem to have a lot of armor. So that hit point pool is kind of like it is its armor. If that makes sense?
Of course it makes sense. It allows you to farm more damage, but hey, maybe she's a cruiser, so she can't get hit by those magical deep water torpedoes we're gonna get.
Oh, that's a good point. I don't know about the ship. When you think about it, it has more HP than the Iowa, right? I mean,
yes.
I don't know about you, but that makes me laugh. But I guess it's a battle cruiser. Is that what they're saying this is?
It really is in terms of what it was designed to do. But yeah, I mean, it's so weird to have a ship that really is that they're saying falls on the cruiser side of the battle cruiser line, whereas we had Hood, which really was designated a battle cruiser, that was designated a battleship in terms of World Warships.
Yeah, I'm very interested to see where this goes, because I know it was this week, right, that it was put on the dev blog. And it's very interesting to see that the stats on the ship, and we all know that might not be how it is if it even makes it into the game. But I really hope that if it does make it into the game, Wargaming thinks about adding the Alaska / Guam, because that's kind of would be like the USN equivalent, right? Now, I don't know how they would do HP pools and all that, because, I mean, if the Alaska / Guam had more HP than the Iowa, I think that would be kind of funny. But, that's going off on a tangent. But, with the Stalingrad coming, and we all know it's coming because it's the clan battles reward after 3 flags. How is this ship going to compare to that ship? And, there's a lot coming that we don't really know the answer to. And it's just, I think it was kind of like here's a early sneak peek of a ship that, is coming. And I kind of like it, because it leads to a lot of speculation on our part, on the part of the community. And, how is this ship going to fit into the game? Because I think I really feel it's the first of its kind of class, right? Like, it's first of its type in the game.
Well, Kronstadt was designated the Project 69 class heavy cruiser in the Russian Navy. And it was supposed to displace essentially 40,000 metric tons. So that is relatively on par with the Iowa class. I mean, it's a little underneath it. So, I mean, it's not like I feel like the HP is in the ballpark, but having it be more than Iowa doesn't make sense to me.
And is it going to have trolley armor that just like some of the other Russian cruisers?
I do think that the Kronstadt will play very similar to the Moscow, other than the radar part, because, I mean, the armor is probably going to be basically the same, and the ship will, I guess, be bigger. But, Moscow also has a high HP pool and also has probably the same armor numbers, because she's also a cruiser. I guess the difference is just going to be in the guns and the fact that you need to get slightly closer.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely going to be interesting to see what they do with this. And, when we get our hands on Stalingrad, and how these cruisers are going to play. I know, just watching the forums for a very long time, there was a lot of talk about Alaska and its viability and what tier you would put it at, what HP that it should have, and just the debate back and forth on the forums was pretty wild. And it is going to be very interesting to see what happens with Kronstadt and where this falls, how it plays in the game, and how it actually survives in the in-game environment once you actually have battleships and everything else shooting at it.
So a couple of notes in terms of statistics from history. The Kronstadt class was slated to have 230 millimeters of belt armor, which is what the dev blog says it's going to have, and was essentially 40,000 tons. Alaska was 30,000 tons and had 229 millimeters of belt armor. So very similar in terms of armor and guns, superficially at least. But the interesting thing to me is that in designated Kronstadt a cruiser, we have to think about this in terms of clan battles. Clan battles, you can only have you can only have one battleship right now. Now, Kronstadt is tier 9 and wouldn't be allowed in clan battles. However, Stalingrad is slated to be tier 10, and it weighs in at 36,500 tons. Also has 12-inch guns, but only has 180 millimeters of belt armor. So, you have to think about, in clan battles in the future, we're going to be seeing Stalingrads that have probably in the 70,000 HP range that are called cruisers.
Well, you're also going to have to remember, is Stalingrad going to bring anything else besides HP? You know what I mean? Like, is it going to have a radar? What is Stalingrad going to do? Because right now, the way clan battles are, you don't need any AA. So if it's great on AA, I mean, that's irrelevant to clan battles. But I see where your point's going, where the way it's set up right now, a lot of teams bring a lot of cruisers. So it'd be essentially bringing like 3/4 of a battleship, and teams really do that now. When you think about it, how many teams bring Moskvas, because they are so tanky and they are so hard to kill when you only have one battleship, but that's for the future. But I see where you're going with this. And I see where you're going because of the designation of the Kronstadt. And we don't know, I mean, we don't really know. I don't think they've released anything on the Stalingrad, right? Besides, like, it's going to be there. It's the reward. Yeah, but that's it, right? They haven't done any stats or anything like that. So,
yeah,
I mean, we'll have to wait to see for that. But, yeah, I see where you're going with, your point.
Well, one thing to note here is that Kronstadt, at least, right now is not slated to have radar. The consumables from the dev blog say that it's going to have a damage control party, defensive fire or hydroacoustic, a spotting aircraft, and repair party, which is pretty standard for a Tier 9 cruiser, but doesn't have radar. So will Stalingrad be in that vein? Because if Stalingrad doesn't have radar, then some of the reason that you bring a Moskva isn't there.
If Stalingrad does have radar, I don't see why you would. And there's a lot of other things, gun performance. There's so many other things that are going to go into it. But if they're comparable, you would probably bring the bigger guns, right? But you would be trading reload and all. There's so much we go into, but we'll see.
No, this is Russians we're talking about. You don't trade any. You get all the stats, all the bonuses for guns. Come on, you saw Euro's video.
So a couple other things to know. You talked about AA. Stalingrad historically had 6 twin 130 millimeter twin dual performance mounts, 6 quadruple 45 millimeter mounts, and 10 quadruple 25 millimeter mounts. Now compare that to Alaska. Alaska had 12 5-inch guns, 56 40 millimeter guns, and 34 20 millimeter guns. The AA power on Alaska is in a totally different class.
And think about it. If Alaska is put into the game as a quote unquote cruiser, it should have defensive fire.
That's just insane to me. You're essentially looking at a Iowa class DPS in terms of AA with defensive fire. Can you imagine what kind of cancer that would be, Aerroon, to a carrier?
I don't know. I think carriers
I was going to say, aren't
used
carriers used to every ship having a bunch of AA? I played my midway yesterday, and the enemy team had 2 Des Moines, 3 Montanas, bunch of Gearings. AA is, I don't know. I think carrier players are used to losing planes and all that.
Besides, it's better than what clan battles are anyway.
Alrighty. Well, let's move on for a bit. So a bit of a reversal from our normal mode. Aerroon is here to talk about ranked after the season is completed. So Aerroon, what did you think was kind of the most surprising in terms of practical ships or unpractical ships and tactics from the most recent ranked season?
Honestly, they felt somewhat similar, but the most surprising thing about ranked for me was that I got rank 1 on my 999th ranked match overall. I thought that was a beautiful number. But in terms of tactics and ranked itself, it didn't really surprise me that much. Although maybe what surprised me was that there were destroyers that were other than the Loyang. Although I suppose every destroyer wished they were a Loyang because I just didn't really see a downside to that destroyer. I suppose there were more cruisers than I expected, especially in the rank 2 to 5 bracket. And the cruisers weren't like Atago or Chapayev. It felt weird seeing Admiral Hippers there, although I'm not sure how much they did. Battleship-wise, I would say I was surprised somewhat by the amount of Bismarcks and Tirpitzes, but perhaps people just didn't have a better Tier 8 battleship, because I would have recommended Amalia and North Carolina over them pretty much every single time. I guess there were less matches without any cruisers to me. In the past we've had many, many more matches from my experience that were purely battleships and destroyers at the higher ranks. In terms of the way people played, I think the maps were nice because they made it slightly different than it was usually, just the 2 caps. You had many maps with 3 caps. So strategy-wise, I think there was more you could do as a battleship. What I liked doing was I was taking my one battleship and going over to a side so that I would be at like a 90-degree angle from my team, based on where the enemy team is. That way I could see that they would either show broadside to me or the rest of my team. And I saw many other people actually do that as well, which was quite surprising because in the past I don't think many people did that.
Kami, Vanessa,
I'll let Vanessa go first because she had an incredible run in ranked. Go ahead, Vanessa.
Yeah, I was very fortunate with the run that I had in ranked. It only took me 82 battles to rank out, and I'm gonna place this squarely on the Loyang. The Loyang is stupid overpowered. I felt that it broke this rank season, and people like to complain about the Belfast. And as a destroyer player, I feel that the Belfast didn't break the game as much as the Loyang did. The Loyang with the sonar mod was it was too game breaking in this mode. And I felt this was one of the worst rank seasons to play with, even from the perspective of how good of a run that I had. I mean, it took me, I remember posting, it took me like 22 games to go from rank 13 to rank 7. And that was just the first day. I only lost 2 matches and I didn't even lose a star on those matches. So yeah, I was very fortunate, but I also was very fortunate with the ship that I had because the ship was just too stupid overpowered. Even when I got to the rank 5 to 2, I was surprised to see the amount of cruisers there. But then when I saw the gameplay from those cruisers, I knew that the people playing those cruisers were pretty decent and they were playing their radar very well. I even saw radar I can't even talk today. Edinburghs that were really crafty in employing their radar. And if you had a team that talked and was pretty, good at like, hey, I'll smoke you, get here to this point, then things worked really, really, really well. And then there was times where the team didn't talk and the games went pretty horribly. But I mean, there were so many times where I could move to a certain spot on the map and be able to employ sonar. And the sonar, with the sonar mod, your sonar was up forever. And any destroyer that got spotted, everyone was shooting at that destroyer, like standard ranked, even not in ranked anymore. Everyone just shoots at destroyers. So that's just the thing. If you played smart, if you played the objective, if you used your cooldowns effectively, that the Loyang just broke the game. And I saw the salt. I experienced it when I had bad games, and I saw what other people were talking about, and it really makes me want a tier 9 ranked season without premiums. I wish Wargaming would do it, would have the courage to do it, and let us all try it.
I definitely agree with the tier 9 thing, but we've said that before, so nobody's surprised by that. I have to agree with you about Loyang as well, Vanessa. I didn't actually rank out this season. I ran out of time, but I was playing Loyang at the end, and I was shocked at someone like me who's relatively bad at DDs, that Loyang just had so many advantages and was so easy to play that it felt unfair, like you said.
It was worse than Belfast. It just broke this season.
Kami, was Loyang really high on your list of complaints about this season as well?
I'm not going to say the ship. I'm going to say its buff to its hydro was probably the worst thing that could have happened before the ranked season, because the Loyang dominated ranked games. I don't care how many radars you brought or how many battleships you brought, as long as you had a good Loyang player on your team, more than likely you won. And I can tell you, I ranked down the Loyang. I tried a bunch. I tried a few different ships, and I just found it was the easiest ship to play. Because if you get that early destroyer kill in ranked, I mean, the game just typically, I'm not going to say always, because there were times when teams chased and ended up losing their ships. But more times than not, if you got the early kill using the Loyang's ability to gunfight and control a cap, you typically won the ranked game. And this season, I would have to say surprises. Saw a lot of New Orleans, both above rank 5 and in the rank 2 to 5 bracket, which really surprised me. I saw not as many Kutuzovs as I expected. I saw more Chapayevs than I saw Kutuzovs. Battleship wise, I saw everything. A lot of Bismarcks and Tirpitz, like Aerroon said, and I
actually found Tirpitz to be really, really effective as a battleship because the secondaries could easily shoot over some of the islands that you could just sit behind. And so if somebody was lighting a destroyer or another ship on the other side of the island, you got free damage.
That's great and all, but just don't like the way that ship performs gun-wise or how much damage it takes. But, I mean, I did see a lot of them, and I can see your point with the secondaries. But, I mean, if you're relying on your secondaries, that's I don't know. But it was a season that was trying for me. I had a lot of players on my team, and it's my own fault for waiting as long as I did, and the times that I played at. I had some players that I recognized a lot that were not going to say bad, but they weren't good. We'll leave it at that. And I saw a lot of plays where I actually saw some players that would just charge into the cap, and it was especially bad this season. I think it was because of the Low Yang, would charge into the cap, smoke up, and pop their Hydra, and then instantly eat Peds, which made no sense to me as you have the Hydra running. But whatever. But I mean, overall, the season was trying. I ranked out. I ended up getting I got my black. But this season, 8 has really turned. It will be. I mean, if they do 8 again, it's gonna be the Low Yang. I mean, I don't see anything changing if the Low Yang stays the way it is and it stays at tier 8. But it was ranked.
I actually somewhat disagree about what you guys said. I do think I agree that the Low Yang was incredibly powerful for the destroyers, but I do think that I did much of what you did. I ended up ranking out really late into the season, and that probably pushed me into more games than I wanted. But I didn't feel that the Low Yang actually dictated the game. Yes, if you got an early destroyer kill, but what I found is that it was quite rare that destroyer kills actually came from Low Yang's Hydra. What the Hydra more did was that the Low Yang stayed safe. I very, very rarely saw that somebody just ate a random torpedo while capping. That's quite different from the previous seasons. To me, it seemed more like if the Low Yang tried to push a bit too hard and to hydro the other destroyers, then a radar cruiser just comes around radars and you suddenly have 4 battleships firing on that one Low Yang, and it doesn't really matter how overpowered your Hydra is because you're going to eat some AP, and usually that leaves a slightly bad taste in the Low Yang's mouth. So I didn't feel that the Low Yang was quite as deciding on the matches. However, of course, when you had situations where both teams only have one destroyer or there was no radar around, that was quite different. One thing I did notice is because we had those 3 cap matches, I think it was slightly more likely than in the past that a destroyer would end up in some kind of 1 versus 1 fight. For instance, I think it is Sea of Fortune that had the 1 cap on the side. That cap was the one that the Low Yang had to go to, because if the enemy Low Yang went there and you sent like a Benson, your team would be behind. But to me, again, it just didn't feel that the Low Yang dictated the game nearly as much as I would have thought. The reason I didn't like the Tirpitzes and Bismarcks was because their armor just wasn't as good as something like, the Amagi, I suppose. The Amagi's armor scheme is simply magical, and it just avoids so many AP shots. I didn't see almost any carriers, though.
Aerroon carrier CV's dead class.
So I do want to say one thing about Tirpitz and Bismarck and their armor scheme. Their armor scheme is workable if you're really good at angling your armor and not showing your rear turrets unless you're actually firing them. The problem that I find with many Tirpitz and Bismarck players is that they leave their too much of their side exposed for too much of the time. And they take the penetration damage that we all know that Tirpitzes and Bismarcks take. But if you angle your bow, they're actually relatively good at bouncing shells in that way. Now, I realize that is something a little bit more of maybe an advanced technique, but it is real and it does work that way.
As far as the ranked season goes, I had an interesting match, one match, actually a bunch of them. You see, I had this team that decided that for some reason they must push. I was in an Amagi at the time, and the team started going in 1 by 1, and they kept pushing, even though we were ahead. And the problem was that, when you're ahead, you don't really want to push. You want the opponent to push into you because pushing is riskier. And so, of course, our team managed to start dying 1 by 1, and we ended up losing the game. But as that went on, some of the teammates of mine, because I didn't quite push, with them like that one by one, because I thought we were ahead, and it's better to just sit there and wait until the enemies come to us. They literally called me a bot and asked if and asked, how did I fail up to tier 8 and then to rank 2 to 5? It was quite amusing. Although slightly less amusing because I got the same people in my matches a few games in a row, and I'm pretty sure they reported me in every single game, and I ended up getting chat banned because of it while not really saying anything. But it was still amusing because I had my
I reported you.
stream chat to laugh about them.
Yes, exactly.
Was it for the Presti for stats comment?
So this weekend, Season 2 of Clan Battles gets underway, with a slightly extended prime time for battles, up to 4 hours from last season's 3 hours. With the addition of what amounts to a bragging rights league above Typhoon League, this season promises to be similar to the first season with the same ship restrictions, albeit with a slightly different map rotation. What do you guys foresee will happen in this push for the second out of the 3 required flags?
I believe most clans, like we did, will try to get their members their flags. Other than that, I mean, depending on, unless you want the bragging rights, I mean, I could see where clans are going to go for that number 1 spot. But I mean, I'm all about just getting our players that want the flag, their flag, and then go from there. I think we are going to make a more concerted effort to place higher, because it seems like some of the tournaments that are coming up are using clan battle rankings as seeding placement, which may change. I don't know. But I mean, I just see more of the same without carriers, without a second battleship or anything like that. I think you're just going to see a lot of the same compositions you've seen. I think you're going to see, 1 destroyer, no destroyers, a bunch of Hindenburgs. I mean, yes, the map rotation is different. I think they took out. I honestly feel like they took out the best map, which was Sea of Fortune, and they put in Tears of the Desert.
Right, but it's the new Tears of the Desert.
I played it, yes.
It has the diagonal.
One side has a distinct
spawn,
advantage over the other side. I believe it's the north side spawn, the northeast spawn. There's some islands up there that you can just hide behind, and the other team can't push to them without getting exposed. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how teams play it, because I mean, it is this smaller format, no carriers. So I just feel a lot more of the same, and without any, because really they didn't make any significant changes besides adding a league and adding changing some maps out. So I don't know.
Aerroon, did you play in the first season of Clan Battles, and do you plan to play in this one?
No to the first question, and I'm not sure about the second one. It just came at basically I didn't like the attitude that many of the proponents for Clan Battles had, and so I didn't really want to get involved, but I suppose I will eventually have to. My problem with it is that, other than the attitude people had, is that, you have to play at a specific time of the day, and often I don't play the game at that time. And the other problem is that you will have to play with a group of people. So not only do you have to play at that time, you have to also get enough other people to play at that specific time. And, they have to have the right ships and actually be willing to play, not have other commitments, etc. I don't know. That usually ends up with a lot of waiting, and I dislike waiting while playing games.
So, Vanessa, one of your big complaints about the first season of Clan Battles is that about the window of prime time. Does the extension that they did to the prime time do anything for you, or no?
Well, if it's the same days of the week and my normal work schedule, I know I've got a slight different work schedule this time, but it's still going to be restrictive, and it's still going to be really difficult for anyone who doesn't hold a 9 to 5 Monday, Monday through Friday. Yeah. So I don't know. I'll see. I guess I could try and make an effort, because I'm on a slightly different schedule, but I don't know. At this point, I'd almost rather defer to the people who really want to do Clan Battle first, and then if I can participate, that would be great. But otherwise, I don't want to bring down the team.
I don't remember if it's the same last time, but it's Wednesday, Thursday, Saturday, Sunday is the days of the week this week.
That's the same days. Wednesday, Thursday. Yeah, that's the same days.
No, I couldn't remember off the top of my head if it was or not. So patch 0.7.1 dropped this week with a new French port, Marseille, new French-based collectibles, and French missions starting on Friday, February 9th. Of note is the rare chance to get missions from French crates to earn the tier 5 to 8 French battleships before the 0.7.2 patch drops with the full French line. This is a new way to introduce a line, and I'm curious what you guys think about the ability of people to earn their up to the tier 8 even before the ships are officially released.
I don't like the fact that you can earn them before the ships are released. Other than that, I don't really have much problem with it because, I'll be honest, many people, especially the experienced players, will just skip over many of the lower tiers with free XP anyway because they just aren't that interesting to play. Not necessarily because the ships aren't as interesting, but because people don't want to do lower tier gameplay. The other thing, I suppose, the reason for it is that so we don't get matchmaking stuck with those 700 battleships in queue yet again.
So we did have some complications when people were able to earn tier 8 Bismarcks basically without having to have earned their way to tier 8 before. That's similar to what they're going to be able to do with these. They potentially could earn a tier 8 ship without having gotten there before. But do you guys feel like the game has progressed to a point where that's less of an issue, that we're going to see fewer people that are having their first tier 8 ship be Richelieu?
Maybe. I don't know. I mean, yeah, you're going to run into that instance. But yeah, I mean, the game's been out for a while. Most people are sitting on a ton of free XP and can just power through the lines or get the ships that they want and skip the ones that they feel they don't want to play. And on a personal level, as a destroyer player, it'll be a good time to play destroyers again. So, yeah.
Great.
Kami, could we get your thoughts about this kind of new way to market a new line?
That have no idea what they're doing. I don't really care. I mean, I'd just more people to farm, I guess. I mean, it's interesting that you can earn them before they're even out. But do I feel like it's really gonna skew the game? No, I don't think so. I think this might sound harsh, but the quality of player on this game is already pretty low. So, I mean, is this gonna change the random battle? Not really. It's just gonna add more battleships. And when everybody loves battleships, I love seeing 8 battleships in the game. They're awesome, especially 7 of them that don't know how to angle or anything. It makes it even more fun.
I'll be honest, I actually do like it when there are many battleships. It's the only class that I don't mind if there are too many of, because they are the most predictable ships, and that makes playing against them, in my opinion, a lot more fun. Also, my Hindenburg is ready, so they can bring as many as they want.
Yeah, and then we have Vanessa and her destroyers with the deep water torpedoes ready to flood us all.
Oh, so that's why they're releasing the Asashio in that form. Okay, I see.
Now it all makes sense. Well, it was great to have you back on the show again, Aerroon. We obviously will want to have you back again in the future. But is there anything that you want to do? Any shout outs about your content or whatnot?
Not really. It's the usual stuff. I'm on YouTube. I try to stream almost every day now, although it might not be at the best of time for many people, but I'll try my best on it. In terms of content, I'm still doing some of the previews. I'll still probably put up the Salem. Today I'll show an Asashio video, but it's the old version. Hopefully the new one will have as much fun trying to hit battleships. But that's kind of it. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's always a pleasure. We always enjoy. You have great opinions to share. So, Kami, Vanessa, did you guys have anything to announce before the end of the show?
I think so.
Fair enough. Well, that's it for this week, folks. Next week, we will have Isolate from the EU region on to talk about the King of the Sea finals and streaming it for Wargaming, and have a discussion about what makes a premium ship. Remember, our podcast episodes are now also released on YouTube with listener gameplay as backdrop. If you have a spectacular game and would like to be featured on the podcast YouTube, please drop us an email at warshipspodcast@gmail.com with your replay, screenshots of the end battle screen, and a brief summary of the game. As always, follow us on Facebook and Twitter for updates between podcasts. We, of course, want to thank our amazing Patreon backers. And if you're interested in supporting us, please consider becoming a backer yourself. Take care, everyone, and we'll see you next week.